Thanks for joining us on the JX today. We're into a new month and into the heart of growing season just like that. It seems like a really good time to make contact once again with our resident master gardener, Lynn Kunstman, for another segment of Garden for Life. Lynn, welcome back to the Jefferson Exchange.
Oh, very happy to be here.
So let's talk first about the shift we have to make at this point in the year, because we're getting into much warmer days. The rain is pretty much behind us, and I realized I caught myself a little flat-footed with gardening because it'd been raining so much I didn't bother to put soaker hoses out. And then it was like, oh, I need to do that, don't I?
Oh, everything's scorching now. Yeah, it was that instant flip to summer, right? Mm-hmm. It's like we're just skipping spring and going straight into 90-degree days, which is kind of shocking to the plants that are out in our yard. Or if you hadn't put your plants out and then you tried to do it during that heat, that really sets them back and causes them to suffer. So important on those really hot days, if you're planting anything, that you maybe give it some shade during the hottest part of the day. If the days, the temps are up at 90 degrees, this is really not the best time of year to be actually sticking things into the ground. But that said, if you don't have your summer garden in, you can still get it in between now and even mid-June. Mm-hmm. So, watch the weather, watch for the coolest days, and try and transplant stuff out then. But if you're putting it out in the heat, make sure you water it in well and maybe give it a little shade under a flower pot for the hot part of the afternoon.
So that is a fairly narrow window, isn't it? I mean, because, the last frost date for Medford, I think, is May 18th. And then,
Right. And you can certainly keep planting things like bush beans and squash, although why you would want to, we actually do two plantings of zucchini, one early that then I have to fight the squash bugs for, and then another one later in the season, because usually the first zucchini vines have spent themselves by the time I'm ready to make salsa with zucchini in the fall. So we make a second planting sometime around, early July of zucchini. So you can do things like corn, beans, squash further into the summer, but everything else should be in, by mid-June.
But I noticed with cucumbers, too, because I planted those this year, that they suggest rotations. You can do like another planting 3 weeks until the middle of summer.
Right. Yeah. Depending on the type of cucumber, yes, you can. Mm-hmm. So, for people who want to make a lot of pickles or, just really like eating a lot of cucumbers, then yes, you can, because the vines, those vines expend themselves pretty rapidly, those squash vines, because they are making seed. Even if it's that tender young seed inside a cucumber or a zucchini, they're producing what they think they need to do to be able to grow again the following year as a new plant. And so the vines themselves really get expended during that production of those fruits. So, it's not a bad idea to, leave yourself some room in the garden to put some of those things in so that you can get the season to last longer, especially since our fall seasons are going so late now.
Oh, that's true, yeah. Mm-hmm.
We didn't have frost until, I don't think, at our house, we had it until November, Mm-hmm. So that means you've got a whole, it used to be like October 20th was our usual first frost date, but we've gotten we've bumped a couple weeks out now. So, seasons are extending, and people can take advantage of that.
All right, Garden for Life is the segment here on the Jefferson Exchange with Lynn Kunstman from Jackson County Master Gardeners. We did pre-record this. If you want to get some stuff in the way of questions for Lynn for future editions of this, then send those to jx@jeffnet.org. Now, you were talking about planting new vines and stuff, or planting new squash because the other vines are getting expended. But it reminds me, too, that that I've been working with some more plants myself this year that where there are some trimming and thinning processes to go on. It's like, when this stuff comes in and it's 2 inches tall and you got 4 plants, pick the best 2 and get rid of the other 2.
Right.
So some decisions you have to make along the way.
Yeah. So there's that. You probably are going to start more than you can ever use in your yard. and it's really, especially if you're planting row crops like carrots or beets or those kinds of things, you sow really thickly, then you really need to be brutal about thinning those out to the correct spacing so that you get proper growth. And so thinning plants is really quite necessary if you want to get good production from the ones you're leaving in the soil. You've got to give them the room that they require. So read those seed packets really carefully. That's the best advice I can give to people is look at those seed packets and follow those instructions.
Yeah, get your reading glasses if necessary because they tend to be kind of small, but yeah, they are very detailed in spacing and in timing and all that.
Miniature font. Yeah. You get a big magnifying glass. And I know some seed packets are better at giving information than others. I know Botanical Interest, if you're buying their seeds, those envelopes open up and there's a whole book on the inside.
Oh, yeah.
They print the inside of the seed packet, so there's lots of information, and that's good information that people should read and follow the instructions for.
Yeah, I've noticed the ones that say, plant it 1/3 of an inch deep and make sure they're spaced 18 inches apart. But then it says, but the basic instruction says plant a few seeds. It's like, how many is a few?
Yeah, right. Well, 3 at least.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the reason is you want to make sure there's at least some germination in that spot, right? If you're actually seeding something like bell peppers out in the garden, you don't want to just plant one seed every 24 inches because if you don't get germination or the earwigs come by and, eat what you put in, you want to make sure you've got some insurance there. And you can always thin back to the most vigorous plant. So, yeah.
So some choices you have to make. I mean, if you get too attached to your babies in the garden, you're going to have to figure out a couple. It's like, no, you're not doing as much. You got to go.
You got to go. Be brutal. You got to be brutal.
Yeah. Talk about that you'd mentioned if in case the earwigs come, and we can certainly spend the whole time talking about pests or bugs or whatever. But the fact is that we had talked about this before, that sometimes you do want to have some stuff nearby that it's like, okay, these are yours and these are for me.
Yeah, sure. You can do things like plant trap crops around your garden. To try and draw them away, things like radishes, which come up really quickly, and give them something to eat while your other vegetables are inside the garden fence, trying to get up and away. Nasturtiums also work as a trap crop, so they can actually attract some of those pests away from your vegetables. With the earwigs, because I recommend that people keep mulch on the soil, it's really hard to have them not be in your yard where you're growing your vegetables. And I tend to use, when I transplant something into my garden, and I grow things from transplants, not from seed, for just that reason. I know I've got a lot of little critters out there, and they're voracious, and I have better luck if I plant a transplant, rather than trying to seed directly. And I always put Sluggo Plus around because it takes care of not only snails and slugs, but the earwigs as well. And so I don't have those kinds of problems because we just know we've got those in our yard, and we'll just give them the bait to eat.
Okay, yeah, this is yours, guys. Take it away.
Yeah, you have fun.
Now, some of the stuff I was planning this year was talking about make a hill like 9 to 12 inches deep. And I noticed this June is also the month you want to hill potatoes. Why hills for some things?
Yeah, the squash. Generally, squash grow in a mound. I mean, a squash in the wild would rot in place, and that would create compost that then the seeds the following year would spring out of. And so a hill is kind of a natural condition that squash are used to growing in. And it allows you to add a lot of compost. They're very heavy feeders. And so creating a hill of, good composted soil gives them a good solid footing and an ability to get down, their roots down. They don't have really strong roots, and so you want to give them nice, fluffy soil to get them established and let them feed well. Mm-hmm. So that's my understanding for squash. And with the potatoes, that's a different issue. Hilling potatoes is because as you push soil back up along the stems that have grown up from, your original seed potatoes, the stems are going to create tubers all along the stems that you bury. And so you're just mounding up to create more potatoes. It's real important to hill your potatoes so that you get a good, robust crop.
So I was all proud of myself when I'd taken the weed whacker to the outside of the raised beds and everything and gotten things all cleared up, and I had grass plants growing again like the next day, I think. I mean, is there any... So you're the master. What's the technique? I mean, do you do anything that just weeds gets everything for a while anyway?
I have a horrible problem in my yard with Bermuda grass, which really you cannot weed whack and you cannot... I use like the horticultural vinegar sprays, which will kill the top of the plant, but it certainly doesn't kill the roots. And so I have stuff coming back all the time. I do a lot of pulling, certainly of the annual grasses. I pull them out. I try to get to them before they go to seed, but I never manage to. And then, of course, the seeds have burst and they're all over the yard. So the seed bank in my yard is robust, to say the least.
Yeah, we have a great foxtail collection of our own. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so, I just do pulling. I weed whack when I can and let it dry out if I'm not irrigating that area. But, of course, if it's in a garden, of course you're watering, and it's just going to come back. I've got dead nettle and yellow nutsedge and Bermuda grass and all. My yard's a nightmare. But I don't want to use poisons, so I'm not going to use things like Roundup and, weed killer and those kinds of things. Certainly not in my food garden and usually not anywhere around where I've got pollinator plants, which is most of the rest of my yard. Mm-hmm. So, it's really tough and it's physical, it's manual labor, basically.
Mm-hmm. What's your tool of choice, though? Because I've been using a screwdriver to get some of the deeper roots.
Okay. A hori knife.
Ah, that's right. Yes. A hori knife.
Yeah, the hori knife is such a great tool because it's got one serrated edge, it's got one sharp edge, and you can use it like a trowel and a digging tool and a weed prior. It's great. And it also has a little cutting thing. If you've got twine that you're tying up plants with, you can actually cut your twine on the little sharpened hook up near the handle. I mean, it's a great all-purpose hand tool. I just really think everybody should have one.
That's on
terrific.
My list.
It can get down deep. It's, the blade is probably 9-10 inches long, and so you can get down to get out some of those big, long roots. Of course, if they're tap roots, they're, if you don't get every single bit of it.
It's gonna come back.
But if you can keep the things from photosynthesizing, if you can keep the tops cut down or smothered in some way, and then the roots will die eventually. Even Bermuda grass, that will happen with.
Oh wow!
You keep it buried long enough, it can't photosynthesize, and the roots can't live.
So Lynn, we got about 30 seconds left to talk about how Spring Garden Fair went and what you got coming up next.
Yeah, we brought in about a ton of money at Spring Garden Fair in one day. It was really a success out there at the Extension Service. And we are having a June 24th native plant sale from 9 to 2 on Saturday, June 24th, and we hope to see people out there at that.
All right. Lynn Kunstman from Jackson County Master Gardeners joining us once again for Garden for Life. Always a pleasure.
Thanks a lot.
Since we record the segments now, we can't take live questions, but send them along for next time. I'll keep your question ready for our next chat with Lynn. Send it along to jx@jeffnet.org, subject line Garden for Life or just gardening. It's break time on the Jefferson Exchange. We'll be back here on JPR.